Well, I was born here at Horseshoe Lake. I'm Martha McKay, and we lived here until I was about 5, and my parents brought us to San Francisco, where I grew up. But I spent all my summers here and love it here at Horseshoe Lake with my grandparents, where we spent our summers. And over the years, they used to show us these old family films that were just wonderful, that I remember very well. And when I moved back here from San Francisco, I was in my early 20s, and I asked my grandfather about the films, and he just said, "You can have them. You can have all of them. They're down there in that closet over there." And okay, so there were like 30 cans of all of these vintage 16mm films. Some were black and white, some were color, early color. And so over the next couple of years, I got our old projector, and when I had time, I went through them, and I ended up whittling it down to about 3.5 hours worth of film. And it's the earliest films I have. Well, first of all, they were all taken by my great-grandmother, Sarah Day, who lived at Ashler Hall in Memphis. And she shot with a 16mm camera, starting in 1927, which I learned that was quite rare. That anybody who had a camera in those days usually shot with like an 8mm, but a 16mm was more of a professional camera. So the films were in remarkably good condition, and I preserved them, I did some editing, and then I transferred them professionally to videotape, and I kind of put them aside. Then years later, when I was in my 30s, I was studying at the University of Washington, where I got my degree in the comparative history of ideas, which was an unusual kind of old school type. Well, it was like a return to a classic liberal arts education. But what was wonderful is that the director there really supported me in doing something that I wanted to do with my life that I was already interested in. So he gave me a vehicle for the university to support me in completing a project, which I did, which ended up in this thesis, which is called 4 Generations of Southern Women, A Comparative Look. And this was comparative history of ideas, so I thought that I would use different media to report or reflect on each generation of my family. Women, all women. So the first one was my great-grandmother, Sarah Day Snowden, and she was reflected in her films, the films that she took. The next generation was my grandmother, Grace Mountcastle Snowden, and I did a series of video interviews of her back in the early 80s before she died. So I had her through the videos, and then my mother I did audio tapes of where I interviewed her, and before she died, and then the writing of my own. So that's film, video, tape, and writing in 4 generations. And someday I hope to be able to put these films on some kind of accessible place where you can look at them yourselves.